Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tea Time with TeaCup Entrepreneurs. I am your hostess, Steph Pellish, and welcome to our newest episode of Tea Time with Teacup Entrepreneurs with Kathleen Brogan. I'm very excited to introduce you to Kathleen. She was a former speech therapist, still is a speech therapist, turned into a senior living specialist, and we're going to learn today about her journey with working with senior living specialists in Philly and what it is that she does, how she became an entrepreneur, and what that looks like in her life and for her family. So, welcome, Kathleen. So
Thank you
excited to
so much
have you
for
here
having
today.
me.
You're very welcome. So, as a former OT, I know when we met, I'm like, "Oh, you're in the healthcare field. I can relate, but I would love to know maybe how did you get into speech therapy, and then how did that transition to senior living specialist?
Yeah, so I had no idea what a speech therapist was when I was growing up or in high school. I went to private school back home in Scranton, and so it's not like there was a speech therapist on staff like in public schools, at least in my school. So I had never experienced anyone like being pulled out of the classroom or going
Uh-huh.
to speech therapy. But my senior year of high school, a family friend called me when she found out where I was going to be going to college, which was Loyola in Baltimore. And she was like, I saw they have a speech therapy program. I'm a speech therapist. This is what I do. You can work with kids, you can work with adults, you can work in the hospitals and nursing homes. There's a lot of options. You should try it. And so I did, and I loved it. Right. I know I
Yeah.
don't have some hard hitting story of like a family member, which was interesting in college.
No,
Everyone had like,
so my story is very similar. I had
oh,
no
wow.
idea what an OT was, and one day one of my coaches said, "I play with kids all day." And I was like, "You do what?" "Whatever you do, that's what I'm going to do." And she said, "I'm an occupational therapist." And I was like, "I have no idea what that is, but
Right.
that's what I'm going to do." So it's funny you didn't
Yeah.
even know what a speech therapist was.
Right.
And then it
Yeah.
led you to, go ahead.
Exactly. And in my undergrad, I really didn't know if I wanted to work with kids or adults, but in my master's program, it was very clear I was more interested in the medical side of, dysphagia and treatment for swallowing and, working with people with Parkinson's and dementia versus working with kids.
Hmm.
Especially in my clinical rotations and like our on-site clinicals, it was very obvious I wanted to work with adults. It's great that I had the experience of, children clients anyways in that rotation. But so immediately after grad school, I started working in skilled nursing as a speech therapist. I was in Baltimore. I was the only speech therapist, so I was kind of thrown to the wolves of like a new grad in my, clinical fellowship year, not knowing what I was doing. I don't know if for you as an OT, but it seemed like everything like textbook we learned in grad school, most of it wasn't applicable. Like in real life, they kind of just, it's completely different, right? You're
Yeah.
going into these people's rooms to do therapy, and I walk in to do speech therapy with someone who has swallowing issues, and they're like, "Oh, I could talk. I don't need you." It was a lot of that. It was a lot of, "I don't need you." And as a new
Uh-huh.
grad, I'm like, wow, no one seems to need my services.
Right. It's funny
But,
because a lot of people were like, well, I did early intervention, so it was a lot of,
mm-hmm,
well, my kid's not talking. We need a speech therapist. And then the team was like, oh, you're getting OT. And then as an OT, I come in and they're like, so are you going to teach him how to talk? I'm
right,
like, well, that's
yeah,
part of it. But yeah,
right,
there's a lot of education. Just look at our both of our backgrounds. Like growing up, we didn't know what OT was. We didn't know what speech therapy
right,
was. So, and
right.
then went into it. But how do you expect people to know what it is and what you do? They don't.
Exactly. Right. So it's a lot of education, a lot of, not to jump ahead, but like a lot of like sales of like, this is what I'm here to do, selling myself, right? But yeah, so I was in skilled nursing as a speech therapist in Baltimore. I ended up moving to Virginia when my now husband and I were dating. And in Virginia, I was at a skilled nursing as a speech therapist and I was offered a rehab director job. And I was only 25 years old, and I was like, why would I want to be a rehab director? It sounds like a lot of stress that I don't need right now. And I ended up agreeing to it. It was the best decision because I got to learn so much more about physical therapy, occupational therapy, working with insurances, talking with families clinically about what a good discharge plan might look like, planning for discharge plan A, B, C, D, and E, because everyone comes into a rehab thinking they're going to leave better than, they were the last few years. And that's not always the case. So it was having those really hard conversations with family that I found in myself. I'm like, wow, I'm really good at this. And I preferred that portion of my job versus the speech therapy because I was still having to do speech therapy with the
So you were
patients.
still
I
doing
was,
some clinical work.
yep. So I, as a rehab director, I was always still the only speech therapist. So half of my day was managing the department and half of my day was doing speech therapy. So it was hectic and it was a lot, but I was 25 years old. So it was fine if I was there for longer than,
Yeah.
my scheduled 8 hours. It was new and it was interesting and I was finding new skills in myself and building a different type of confidence. Over the years of doing that though, I really learned I didn't love the speech therapy. Like I dreaded having to, go and do that with the patients and my student loans hated that I spent all this, education on something that I don't even love anymore. Um, and I found in the nursing facilities that I was in, if a social worker was out or if the business office needed assistance, I was learning so much about other departments that I would step up and kind of be that person to assist. So it was nice. I really learned a lot and jump ahead to being on maternity leave with my son 2 years ago. I joined every single Facebook group about like leaving speech therapy, what sort of non-clinical jobs can you get? And it's a lot of questions. There's not a lot of answers,
Yeah.
honestly. I don't know if you ever were in those Facebook groups as an OT, but a lot of people want to leave the clinical side, and there's not really a roadmap of how to do that because we do our undergraduate degree in speech therapy. Then my master's is in speech therapy. So I became a speech therapist. Like, well, what
Right.
else am I good at? Right. I don't
Yeah.
have business experience. I don't have any other experience to put on a resume.
Yeah, I
So
think
yeah,
that's a tricky thing when you have such a specific degree that
yeah,
requires so specific, like detailed credentials and what you learn, right? Like you can work with a range of population, but you're still doing very similar, very detailed work, right? Like speech
right.
therapists are often very detailed people because it is a
Mm-hmm.
very detailed service. Whereas with OT, there's a lot more flexibility
Right.
in what we're doing. It's not as detailed. And so there are, I think a lot of OTs tend to create their own path. And so when I tell people, oh, I was an OT and now I work with women in business. People, I just had someone like a few weeks ago that was like, it's kind of the same thing. I'm like, yeah, a little bit. Because I would like, I learned how to run groups. I'm now running groups. I learned
Yeah,
how to adapt. I learned how to be creative and think on my feet and solve problems and work on people's daily routines, their ADLs. And now I do that just with a different theme. It's no longer with kids, it's now with women and their
right.
business. But no, I think that is something to really that's really interesting that we kind of can pigeonhole ourselves in this degree and then like you said like was that a waste of a degree? Definitely not because you needed
Right.
all of that experience to get that position as a clinical director. But
Right.
now you have that life experience, that hands-on experience. So you're on maternity leave and you're thinking
Mm-hmm.
what what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Going back was not what you were looking for because of the time,
Right.
like all the things.
all of the things. It's just I was home with this baby so happy, and I was just the 12 weeks, I was just dreading every bit of going back. And it wasn't even that I was going to be missing my baby because, and I hate saying that, but I my husband and I knew eventually our son was going to be in daycare. And I just find such a value in, especially as a speech therapist, having those structured environments of daycare and what he would be learning even at such a young age. I knew that that's what I would do. I really just wanted something different. Thinking about what my day to day would look like going back to being a rehab director and speech therapist, I kept thinking, like, can I do this for the next 30 years? Do I really want to? Or are these 12 weeks great time to reach out to different places?
Yeah.
Well, I did not find a new job in those 12 weeks. It's obviously, you think this maternity leave is going to be a vacation, and it's not. So I
Uh-huh.
went,
Uh,
no. So I went back to my job, and it was great. And my job was so flexible. Like if my son was sick when he was in daycare, they were so, understanding of me having to leave early or come in late. There was a lot of back and forth within myself of this is a great job to have. My boss is wonderful. All of the people I worked for were wonderful and so understanding. Would I be stupid to leave? Because a lot of people don't have that flexibility as a rehab director or speech therapist. Um, but again, it was kind of right when my son turned 1, which was this time last year. I was like, what am I doing? I kind of had the same feelings of when I was on maternity leave. And so I decided to make a LinkedIn because as a speech therapist, I just didn't need a LinkedIn. So I had to kind of start from scratch, make a LinkedIn. I connected with everyone I could think of from high school and college. I somehow was able to figure out like these filters of people who used like their history was speech therapist or speech language pathologist, but their current role wasn't. And if I
okay.
were to go on LinkedIn, I don't even know if I'd be able to figure it out. But I was like deep into LinkedIn,
Okay.
figuring out
So
what I can
you
do.
connected with people who were former SLPs
Yep.
and to see what they were doing or to connect with
Yep.
them to see like
To see what
what
they were doing.
okay. So were you
Yep.
observing this or were you actually engaging in conversation to say like what are you doing?
Oh, I was messaging them. I was
I
just like
love this.
putting,
I
yeah,
love
I
it.
was so determined. And my husband, he used to be in recruiting, and he has always been very helpful with like resumes and how to use LinkedIn. And a lot of his friends had also been in recruiting, so I reached out to them of like, what should I be doing with my resume? What should I be doing with my LinkedIn of like how I'm reaching out to people, applying for jobs on LinkedIn? And especially last year and even currently, they were all like, if your resume isn't specifically tailored for every single job that you're applying for, it's just kind of going to go into, a black hole of the internet. And I'm glad that they told
Great.
me that. Right. I mean, it was good because I had such high expectations and I kind of had to like take it back a notch. But I still was reaching out to people all the time, asking former speech therapists, what do they do now? How did they get into that? And a lot of it seemed like was trial and error. Like they took a big pay cut, like they really had to kind of start over. And those were things that I was totally fine with. It was more so if I'm going to leave this job that I was in, it has to be something that I'm really interested in
Yeah.
and not
I
just something.
I love so much of this. I mean, I'm gonna say obviously, but obviously you're a person who is extroverted, who loves communicating, who loves working through problems, even your own, figuring out like how am I gonna do this? And so I'm curious, like if somebody was listening and thinking like, I have this certification, I have this job, I have this degree, that means I'm supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how did you let go of some of that? Like I know we talked about like, yes, like all the value came with you and you need that, right?
Right.
But like how did you let go of some of that to start messaging these people? Or was that part of the process of, all right, if these people can do it, maybe I can still use a piece of this and move on?
Yeah, I think it was definitely, I had the understanding of I didn't just have experience as a speech therapist. I
Hmm.
had that management experience and that experience
Yeah.
with other aspects of healthcare that I found families just have no idea how any of this process works. And I had all of this knowledge from the last 10 years that was just sitting in me in one skilled nursing facility in the northeast part of Philly. Just,
Yeah.
and I really kept thinking, like, this is being wasted. Like, I have so much information that is just going to waste. Like, I could be helping so many more people with my background. And part of me knew, like, I'm always going to keep my speech therapy license. I'm going to keep up with it. So I could always do PRN, or I could always go back if I really wanted to. Um, but I just wanted to find something where I was going to help people. And it was always going to be helping people. I wasn't just going to take some total career change where it would be so out of line. Although I was applying for those types of positions too, being like, maybe
You
I'll love
you
it.
weren't looking for an accounting position.
Right. Um,
No,
yeah.
I think that's so great. And I think, I think it's important too to mention like how you took that people piece, that management piece, and how you saw that as a strength, knowing that the experience that you had could go into almost any other position, right? Because I think in so many roles and positions, it's about the relationships that you build. Like you can always learn the skills.
Hmm.
You can always learn what's necessary, right? Like even as an SLP, you come in a speech language pathologist as a speech you come in and like you said, like you have this whole education, but then you actually have to learn on the job what
Right.
it means. Like you have to learn how to sell yourself to the patient who's like, no, I
Yeah.
don't need services today.
Right.
Um, well, that's actually not true. And I know how to speak. Okay, well, right, there's a lot of that education piece that goes into it, a lot of that people piece. And so I love that that's part of it. So how did you end up with senior living specialist?
Yep. So in my reaching out on LinkedIn, I started talking to all of my neighbors about it. I reached out to the other families in my son's daycare.
I love this.
I reached out to my husband's old coworkers. And I remember the morning I texted him, I was at my desk and I'm like, I'm going to reach out to Ben and Blair. And he's like, well, why? And I'm like, well, Blair works for LinkedIn and Ben does something in the healthcare realm. I'm not exactly sure what it is though. So I reached out to his coworkers and his coworker, Ben, was like, oh, I think you should talk to my mom. Like she's in the Philly area. She is like in the healthcare area. Maybe she'll have some advice. So I get on a Zoom with his mom, Lori Bernstein, and she's telling me about this company that she has, senior living specialists. And I was just like, Lori, I would be so good at this job. Like I just, and it was just really a conversation about like maybe she would have ideas of things I would be good at. And she's describing this company that you help families find senior living communities and you connect them with resources and you really hold the family's hand through the entire process that is so overwhelming that families have no information on. And it kind of turned into an interview. And that's how I'm with senior living specialists now. So all of my reaching out paid off.
I love this. And I want to kind of clarify some things too, because, you went to work for this company, but it's kind of like a realtor who goes to work with Remax. You're still an independent person. So you've got
Yes.
a team that you work with or people that you
Mm-hmm.
kind of work under, but you are really independent in there, which is how your
Exactly.
entrepreneur piece comes to
Yeah.
play, right?
Yeah. So all of my work that I put in, I see the output of it. So I do all of my networking. I do all of my building a referral base, so to speak, which started from zero. My first week, I had to go to a lot of hospitals and rehabs and just kind of figure out, well, where are people who need senior living and who are they reaching out to for questions, and how do I get in front of those people so that they then refer to me? And I'm still doing that. So it's all
I mean,
independent, but
all
it's
all of these
nice.
things, I'm like, of course you're good at these things. Like the fact that you're like, oh, I just reached out to everyone on LinkedIn, and now you're like, now I need to reach out to all of these hospitals and go connect with these people. Like it just seems like this job or this role is really perfect for you. So how,
I feel that way every single day. I'm so grateful.
that's awesome. So how was it though going from full-time managing a team, knowing that you could leave, and I'm sure you had work to bring home, but you at the end of the day weren't responsible for all of the things.
Hmm.
You had other, it was somebody else's name at the end of the day,
Right,
even though I'm
right.
sure in a lot of ways it felt like it was yours.
Oh yeah,
I'm like,
always.
I understand emotionally it feels like all of yours, but theoretically, not theoretically, reality was that if something happened in that facility, they could say goodbye and
Yeah.
it's not really yours. Whereas now, like, this is yours. So, what was that transition like to go to something that it is just you figuring it out? And it sounds like you've got
Honestly, it
great team and support around you too, but
right. And it was really, I don't want to say easy because it's just such a different type of job where it is salesy in a way, right? Selling our services. But in terms of going from working in a company with a team that I'm managing to being on my own has been really easy and really nice because when I was a rehab director, no matter how great my therapy team was and how we were on our P's and Q's and doing everything correctly, if another department, if something was going on with nursing or with, their insurance, it all got mixed up. So no matter how well I was doing my job, it could still feel like a trash day because every other department maybe wasn't,
yeah, there were
it wasn't
outside
as
a lot more outside factors
exactly. And
inside
that's
of that
really where
thing.
my stress seemed to come from. It wasn't my team, the therapist that I worked with, and I am with them a lot still now. They're wonderful and they're such great therapists. It really was every other part of the job that was the stress. Whereas now, all of my effort is, for me.
Yeah.
And yes, I do, depend on, communities, making
Yes.
sure things are in
But at the end of the
order
day,
and the
it's
families.
you and you and you, and
Exactly.
you also get to decide who comes in and supports you
Yes.
versus like, well, that's the nursing team that's there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So can you walk us through a little bit of so as a senior living specialist, like what does that mean? So what
Yeah.
do you do other than go for tours and meet people?
Right. So I help people find senior living communities that are going to be best for their loved ones. So I help people through one of the hardest transitions maybe in their life of moving from their home that they've been in for 30, 40, 50 years into a home, right? When their family puts them away, as a lot of people feel. But we take into account every part of the person, their cognitive piece, do they have any sort of, emotional piece that's tied to it, their finances, geographically, where do they want to be? We hold their hand through the entire process of learning as much as we can about the person to figuring out what communities really fit their needs. And our company is contracted with almost all of the communities in Pennsylvania, a lot in Delaware and New Jersey. So from our system of over 300, after doing an initial assessment and meeting with the family, narrow it down to maybe three or four. So that initial assessment is a huge piece because, and oftentimes it's done in person, sometimes over the phone, but I really like meeting with the person because my clinical side, I know a family can tell me their loved one can do X, Y, and Z, but then actually being with them, I mean, you get this as an OT.
Yeah.
You lay eyes on the person, you're like, oh my gosh, they're totally different for better or for worse.
Yep.
So that assessment piece is really important to me being able to figure out, well, these are the three best places. And then what I do is I go back to the family and kind of talk them through each of them, talk through the pricing with them, talk through what levels of care can this community provide. If someone finances, if they know that they're going to need to apply for Medicaid in the next few years, I'm not going to recommend a place that once they run out of money, they're going to ask them to leave. I'm going to recommend places that they can kind of
Right.
go through the Medicaid application and stay. Um, so that whole piece is just usually like the first like few days of working with a family. Then what we'll do is we'll go on the tours of the places. I oftentimes like going with the families because I'll think of questions that the family might not.
Yeah.
Uh, they're so overwhelmed on these tours, they're getting all this information thrown at them. I'm going to be the voice of reason,
Well,
asking questions.
yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of emotions running to it. And you're talking
Yeah.
about the family. And so it's not always just the person who's moving. Maybe it's a couple that's moving, but you
Mm-hmm.
probably have children or some type of relative who's maybe encouraging this. And so there might be some resentment,
Yep.
resistance. And so I'm sure emotions are running high when you're in those places that just having the clarity to be able to step outside of it to ask
Mm-hmm.
questions is, I'm sure, very supportive.
Yeah. Yeah, families have definitely found a lot of benefit from it. And even if it's just me going on the first tour with them and they go on tours on their own after,
Yeah.
they're kind of set up to see what to expect now. What questions did I ask that they
Mhm.
can then ask moving forward? So once they go on the tours and all that, I really am the one to coordinate all of the paperwork that needs to be done, any sort of assessments that need to be completed, whether they're in the hospital or a rehab moving, or are they home? Do they have to get to their doctor's office, their primary care to get anything completed the community might need? So all of that is just before they move. I follow through with families even after. It's unfortunately common that sometimes people just aren't happy or something changes with their level of acuity with what assistance they need. So I check in with the families even after they move to make sure that things are still going well because
Yeah.
it's even after that, it's even more overwhelming than the actual move, right? Their loved one
Yeah.
is in a
Well,
community.
and it's a transition. I mean, anytime we have a transition, anytime we move, there's a period of adapting, of
Mm-hmm.
learning new things. And, I think of my grandparents, and one of my grandparents moved in and out of a few places, and every time she ended up back at home because she was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, this is where I'm going." And her kids said, "This is where you're going." And then a few months later, she was back at home. She's like, "Nope, I've had enough. I'm coming home."
Yeah.
And she she also would decline and then get better, so she was able to come home. And
Right.
then my other grandmother, she was very excited to move into a community living because she loved having people around her and
Right.
thrived there
Mm-hmm.
because she loved all of the events. She had lunch and dinner with her friends every
Yep.
day. There were always all sorts of things happening. And she was still independent at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, there are things that go into it and just the person, are they excited about moving? How can you get them a little bit more excited? But even when they move, there is like you've had this home that's been yours and all your
Right.
stuff, and so now you're getting rid of stuff, you're downsizing. There's, I'm sure, a lot to grieve along that
Yeah.
process too. And
Yeah.
just life is coming to the next chapter, which
Right.
we assume is nearer to the end.
Yeah.
So
The
how do
other
you,
nice thing about our with what I do now is it's a lot of going to different networking events and meeting with a lot of other professionals in the senior space, the senior
yeah,
living space. So over this almost year I've been with senior living specialists, I've met a lot of professionals that I didn't even realize existed. Like there are move managers where you can hire these people to come in. And oftentimes people do it a year before they're going to be moving. And these people will go through all of your belongings, all of your treasures. They'll go through everything with you while you're still living there to sort through and figure out what are you going to keep, what are you going to donate.
well, I love that.
Yeah, so we connect people with any sort of resource that they need. And one thing I'm finding, which makes so much sense, is a lot of times people just don't want to move. People want to stay home. And so
Yeah.
we connect people with resources to be able to safely age in place in their own home, whether it be connecting them with an occupational therapist who's CAP certified to figure out modifications that would be appropriate to make. Yeah, so it's tying back to my rehab director position. It's nice having these resources to give to families because I did want to maintain that of just helping people no matter what. So even if people don't move, we can still help them. And
Yeah.
I don't think I mentioned this. Our services are completely free. So families oftentimes will think they're wasting my time if, I'm connecting them just with the home care company or resources. I'm like, and I tell them all, I'm like, I made this career change to help families. You're not wasting my time at all. Like this is absolutely something that I want to help you with.
Oh, I
So
love that.
it's been very
For them
rewarding.
and for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, did you ever consider being an entrepreneur? Was that even something that was on your mind of like, oh, let me do
No.
something on my own?
Yeah. No, it definitely wasn't. I definitely when I was applying to different jobs in my search of figuring out a career, on LinkedIn and Indeed, all these companies, they have such a crazy name. So I, apply for whatever a project manager was and not even knowing what the company was. I was just so desperate for something. At so many points, I just didn't even think what would my skills translate to and
Yeah.
what would I be able to really do for myself as an entrepreneur. And so, and I remember when I spoke to my husband, he is always like, wow, I never thought that you would be so into a salesy type of job. He's like, but you're so good at it. He was just like, it's amazing. And
I mean,
so,
it's definitely sales, but it's also like you're supporting the families and in finding their right next home. And so,
right.
as much as a realtor is selling homes, it's
Mm-hmm.
also like you need a home, you need a place to go. And so,
Right.
you're not selling people something that they don't need. You're not
Exactly.
selling like a luxury service. You are
Right.
selling something that people really need to support them, and you're making it easier on them to make that transition. You're making it easier for the families to make that transition. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so incredible.
Thank you.
So being an entrepreneur, were there skills that you found that you did not have that you kind of had to hone?
Definitely, I think being okay with making my own schedule, making my own day. I was so used to, as a rehab director, I knew these were the tasks I had to do every day and get done, whether that meant in this sniff or bringing it home. These are the things that I had to do with my patients, the patients I had to see, how long my sessions were. And now I just am making my own day and figuring out what is going to be beneficial. And that was hard, especially in the beginning. it was a lot of throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck. And it still kind of is.
Yeah,
Every week seems to be so different.
that is the story of the entrepreneur.
Right.
Keep
And
throwing it up to see what works.
it's interesting. And I do think that now it'll be a year in July, the end of July. I definitely think I know better where to put my time and effort. Um, it's not just kind of going out to the same places that, don't really even want me there, like aren't interested in what I'm doing. Why am I wasting my time to be
Right,
doing that?
right.
So that has been the hardest thing, kind of accepting that some of these people just don't see the value no matter how many times I go. And they have my information if they need it. Maybe it's worth trying in a few months, but figuring out different avenues, that has been one of the hardest things, I would say, of what's going to be beneficial.
Yeah, stop banging your head against the wall.
Yeah.
This isn't
Yeah.
working. Love
Right.
it. Yeah, love that. And then I'm curious, like, how did you find Teacup? Like, how did you end up at one of our meetings?
So one of my colleagues, she is wonderful. She actually used to be a social worker. And so she is now with senior living specialists. And one of her biggest recommendations was joining a women's networking group. And she is part of a different women's networking group where there's some overlap in members. And she was like, all they do is speak so highly about Teacup. She was like, I haven't gone. Why don't you try this one out? That's, we never really want to all be part of the same group, right? That's not really beneficial for any of us.
Right.
So she was like, I think you would really like this one and it's close to where you live. And I'm so glad she did. She kind of did all the legwork of recommending a wonderful group. And I've told you this, but it's so nice. I never want the meetings to end. I'm always looking forward to them because networking can be painful. Sometimes I go into these networking meetings and I'm just like, oh my gosh, why am I here? I want this to be over with. There's so much pressure on you
Yeah.
to perform. You feel exhausted after. You're like, what did I just do for the last hour and a half of my life? And I don't feel that way at TeaCup. I'm so excited to see who's there, what members are there, what new people are coming. It's just so homey and no pressure. It's You do a great job, Steph.
Well,
So
thank
thank you
you.
for creating that space.
Yeah, it's something where I just recently have stopped calling it networking because it's so
It's
much
not.
more, and I
Yeah.
didn't have a better word to describe it. So I'd be like, well, it's networking, but it's not. It's really like peer-to-peer
Mm-hmm.
facilitated conversation for the woman business owner to,
Yeah.
yes, are you going to network and meet other women and have conversations and make connections? Absolutely. But there's so much more that's happening inside of the room
Yeah.
for to support you, to support the
Right.
other women and to get to really know them and not feel like you need to be like, I am this person, here's my business card, this is the role that I play, this is what I do.
Right. Yeah,
It's very
because in
transactional.
some of these networking meetings, it's like an open room of people just talking to each other. And you
Yes.
usually assume the people in like little huddles, they already know each other. They're talking about something specific. And I remember I had met with this guy. He's a financial advisor. He's only probably like 25 years old. And this was early on when I started, and I asked him, like, what is your advice for going into these things? He's like, always stand by the drink or the food table, because even if there's a large group of people, like when they go up to order their drink or get food, they have to kind of like split off. And that was helpful, but still painful to like
Yeah,
be in
as someone
those.
who runs groups, when I go to other groups, I'm like, okay, I have a networking event today, and I'm like, I already know, like, I need to be on.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is not the goal of
no,
Teacup. You get to just show up and be
right.
where you are. So
And I love the small groups that we break out into because
yeah,
it allows us to talk about something within our business while still getting to know each other individually. it's not like we're all just in one room the whole time. We're really having deeper conversations, which is really helpful.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about networking groups, but like also this too, like sometimes get stuck in a conversation and you don't know how to get out. And so I kind of facilitate that conversation. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm with this person. Okay, but there's an out.
Yeah. Yeah,
There's a plan to get you in and out of it, but so that you're not just like, oh, I always talk to you. I have never talked to
exactly.
you, but now that I've just talked to you, we have nothing to talk about, and I'm just listening to you drone on. And so that facilitated conversation really helps to avoid that. But I want to make sure that if somebody's interested in learning more about you and what you have coming up, I know you've got an event coming up that you're going to be at and supporting, if you want to talk
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, so next week, I believe it's May 7th at the Newtown Theater, our group, Senior Living Specialists, we're co-hosting a movie. It's called Matter of Mind. Bring your tissues. It is very much like a tearful movie, but it follows care partners of people living with dementia and Alzheimer's. So we're putting that on with one of the home care companies we work closely with and some other companies, but really it's for not just professionals in our industry, but for the community, right? So if anyone knows of someone that they think would benefit from seeing this film, whether they know someone living with Alzheimer's or dementia, if they are a care partner themselves, everyone is welcome. It's a great, great film.
Love that. And then you have
Yeah.
another event at the end of May as well.
Yep. So I do a lot of part of what I like to do is different events at senior centers. And so I go to the Spark Center out in Harleysville and I'm doing a music bingo. It's a fan favorite out there. The Golden Oldies is the music that we play. And so, yeah, if you are wanting to go to the Spark Center and try it out, I'll be there. It's May 27th.
Love that. And I'll make sure that we put those in the show notes. And in
Perfect.
case someone is listening after that, we'll link all the places to find you so that if you have more events coming up, they can reach out and learn about those. But
That sounds
thank
great.
you so much for being here. Do you have a place like a website or social media that you want to share? I mean, I'll put it in the show notes, but somewhere that you would want to send
Yeah,
people.
so our website is seniorlivingspecialistphilly.com. That's for any resources about us. I can have you post my cell phone number. If anyone ever needs help, it's really just calling my cell phone or emailing me so we can post that. I'm pretty active on Facebook in different mom groups and community groups. So that's just my name, Kathleen Brogan.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining me today. This was a great conversation, and
it
I
was.
think it's really helpful in just helping people to learn about different opportunities, how to become an entrepreneur, how to like someone who's just creating something new like I did, or somebody who can step into it and have a little bit more structure and support.
Mhm.
And so I love and appreciate that you shared your journey with us today on that. So thank you so much. And
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you
This was
guys
fun.
tune in next time for our next Tea Time with Teacup Entrepreneurs, and we will see you then.